that one of the things we talk about a lot is that, putting kids that have like skills together because it makes more sense in terms of efficiency of being able to carry it out versus trying to do like one-on-one interventions throughout the day. We'll never have enough resources to be able to carry that out. So it just makes sense that it's more efficient to put kids that have like skills together, at least for that instructional time, right? For kids that have like deficits, so we can address those deficits. But that can often be mistaken for things like, sometimes people will misunderstand and say, well, that sounds like tracking. And tracking is really kind of that old idea of where we just place low kids together and they're together all day long and move together, throughout the day. And we tend to have low expectations in tracking. Tracking is this idea of like, let's just put low kids together and have low expectations, and there's no expectation they're going to catch up because that's really not the goal in tracking. When we're talking about in terms of putting kids that have like instructional needs together, the goal is so that we can get catch-up growth, so that we can accelerate learning. They're behind, and over time we want to be able to close that gap, that achievement gap. And so the goal of these instructional groups, and they're not stagnant, or they're so that we can actually move kids when necessary, so that all kids are moving as far and as fast as possible towards making that catch-up growth would be the goal. And so that's what one of the fundamental differences between that and tracking are, is that it's the goal of catching up versus there is no goal for that in tracking.
What would you say if a teacher told you a story about a situation that they had, and they said, we just had 3 kids test out of RTI?
I'm always a little bit leery of that idea of like testing out of RTI. Testing out of RTI, I think we have to have clear expectations of what really does that mean. When really would you test out of RTI? Unfortunately, it's often been interpreted as it means you're 3 data points above an A line or something. And that's when you test out of RTI. Usually we're doing such things because we're trying to make room for some other kid that is even lower than this kid that's in intervention right now. And so we're trying to make room for this new student in the group. The concern I have about that idea of testing out of RTI is that they made those gains as a function of being in that structured intervention, right? So that they benefited from it greatly, and now we're about to pull away what brought about those gains. And what we tend to see is that such gains are short-lived for the majority of these students once they're pulled away. That the learning characteristics of that student haven't really changed. And so the reason why they did so well in a lot of these structured programs is because of the repetition, the modeling, the scaffolding. And so now they're going to be taken out of that and placed back into a core program or a textbook that doesn't have that built into it, and yet they need it, right? That gradual release to independent practice. There's just, the way those a traditional program teaches is fundamentally different. And the kids that need that structure do very well with it, but they need it, and they tend to need that long term. And so that would be one concern I have, is most of those kids that we exit will find their way back in there next year, and so or in the year after that. Nationwide, that's what the data consistently tells us, is that it's kind of a revolving door. You're in until you look better, and then you're out.